Poem for our fathers. This poem is for our fathers. This poem is for their strengths, for the intolerance ever present in their world, for their pride and disappointments, for their pleasures and passions and promises. This poem is for our fathers. This poem is for New Orleans fathers, when they act girl. This poem is for New Orleans men. This poem is for Dookie and Dutch and Danny Barker. This poem is for the big-time Crip and Nick the Greek. This poem is for Chopsley and Injun Red. This poem is for the coaches and the roaches. This poem is for the brother in the commercial be hollering about, let her have it. This poem is for the English teachers and the midnight preachers. This poem is for the strong men who keep her coming on. This poem is for traditional men, men in the tradition. This poem is for the kids and the professors. This poem is for big old men. This poem is for little bitty men. This poem is for the sensitive men of the 90s and the raging bulls of the 50s. Men named Rattlesnake Dick. Men named Chakula. Men named Francis. Men named Oglethorpe. Men named Gooseberry. You see, I'm very anal with that goose thing. It's terrible. Men named Greenhouse. Men named Delahousie. Men named Hollywood. Men named Babut. Men named Bebe. Men named Papa. Men named Nene. Men named Padi. Men named TT. Men who say Habarigani. Men who say what's up. Men who drive like Rodney King and party at the drop of a Congress cap. Congress cap. Yeah, you guys are getting this Congress. The Congress cap is actually a place that sold hats in the black community on Dumaine and Claiborne. It's gone. Grumbling men, mumbling men, grambling men, gambling men, zoot-suiting men, bull-shooting men, dinky men, stinky men, supermen, pseudo-men, sugar men, booger men, godly men, devilish men. Men who tell jokes like, your mom's so fat, when she buy a ticket she say, 2 please. Or jokes like, your mom like a roll of material, $10 a yard. Or jokes like, what did the monkey eat before he ate the banana? The cherry. Or jokes like, what's your mom's favorite street? Common Street. Straight up men, backsliding men. Signifying men, ignifying men. God-fearing men, disappearing men. Men who try to buy love. Is it talking to your daddy? Men who ain't never been east of East New Orleans. Project men and penthouse men. Poets, painters, printers, and publishers. Bohemians and bankers. That yang money. Triangular offenders and ebony squares. This poem is for our fathers. Men who raise other men's children like they was their own. Men who know about 10 minutes to 2. Men who ain't never put their lips there, so they say. Men whose favorite record was, I'm a hard-fighting man. Brr. Men who was on Pork Chop Hill, not Pork Chop Hill. Men who say Rockefeller, not Rockefeller. Men who say Hawaii instead of Hawaii. Men who say Europe instead of Europe. Men who say corner instead of corner. Men who say trumpeter instead of trumpeter. Men who say frustrated instead of frustrated. Men who say San Gabriel instead of Saint Gabriel. Men who say primary school instead of primary school. Men who say sweet shop instead of candy store. Men who say Pall Mall instead of Pall Mall. Men who say situation instead of situation. Men who say Miro instead of Miro. Men who say bananas, watermelon. Hard-working, pity-pat playing men. Deep South men with their riverfront plates of food. Mac daddies and Shack daddies. Old daddies and new daddies. First-time daddies, baker's dozen daddies. One of them Richard Pryor daddies. This Mr. Gilmore property. One of them, this my house daddies. One of them, if you don't do it with your hands and sweat, it ain't work daddies. One of them, get out my life, woman. You don't love me no more daddies. Men who believe in the belt. The whole belt, nothing but the belt. Instead of sneakers, they say tennis. Instead of mother dear, they say ma dear. Instead of hi darling, they say hey baby. Instead of where are you, they say where you at. Instead of my woman left me, they say she kicked me to the curb. Instead of scooters, they say not curve, but curve. Right. Oh, not curve, but curve. Right. And instead of frozen cups, they say hucklebuck. Instead of cocktail, they say highball. Instead of fight, they say humbug. Instead of robe, they say house coat. Instead of bang bang, they say ya. Instead of inebriated, they say toe down. Instead of upset stomach, they say loose bowels. Instead of did you hear me, they say y'all heard me. Instead of yes, you're correct, they say yeah, you're right. Instead of sure you're correct, they say sure you're right. Instead of I know that's correct, they say I know that's right. Instead of who is that, they say who that. They say Louis Armstrong instead of Herb Alpert. They say the Duke of Earl instead of David Duke. They say Eddie Jefferson instead of George Jefferson. They say Buster Crabbe, Buster Brown, and James Arness, the real Matt Dillon. They say Sidney Bechet instead of Kenny G, Father. Men like your grandpa and his pa, and your Nanette Piran and her pa, and that no good hooligan she was fooling with way uptown who was telling that girl he was going to marry her and never did. Men who get drunk at the picnic every year and think they're Frankie Beverly. Men who still debate about which cowboy had the best horse. Men who came home from World War II bragging of their antics and exploits. I had so much fun in Paris, I wish they'd fight again. Old school, ancient school, Methuselah school men, them yes sir, no sir, I gotta listen to this mess because I got a family to feed men, the indispensables, bellhops and bus drivers, porters and waiters, contractors and cigar makers, house painters and harp players, longshoremen, merchant marines, preachers and pimps. What a difference a cross makes. Men who played with their children in warm Lake Pontchartrain waters. Men who brought their sons to see Henry Hanks fight at Municipal Auditorium and had to sit way at the top. Bourbon Street bouncers, favorite uncles, brothers in the Naham, chiefs, executives, officers, transient residents of Tulane and Broad, that's the jail. Wolfmen howling in the wayward wind, fathers and lovers, nephews and brothers and husbands who love the old ladies, and men fooling around behind their backs, rambling rows, and men who done made the baby with that girl around the way and ain't even claiming that child. For our fathers, their riches and wishes, black socks and their dishes, their dreams and devotions, their schemes and their potions, their creams and their lotions, and stories and glories, love cries and lives, legacies unending, everlasting. This poem is for our fathers.